This meeting is now being recorded.
Okay. Well, greetings everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join me this afternoon. This webinar is intended to provide interested applicants with an overview of the available funding opportunities being awarded by Idaho Career and Technical Education for our federal adult education program. We will be taking Q&A questions through the Q&A feature throughout the webinar, and we will be addressing those when the presentation concludes. During the presentation, we will be providing an overview of the grant as well as an explanation of expectations for grant recipients, an overview of the application process, and a chance to ask questions. This webinar will be recorded, and the recording, slides, and transcript of the questions and answers will be made available on the grant website. The purpose of this grant competition is to identify and fund local providers for adult education. The application process was designed to determine whether and to what extent an applicant has the capacity and experience to carry out a quality program. As we go through today's webinar, and as you look through the application materials, please keep in mind that we are not asking for, nor do we expect, a detailed description of every aspect of your operations. Rather, we are asking applicants to describe what need they are addressing, what activities they will carry out to meet that need, and how they are uniquely qualified to do so. Selected applicants may be asked for further details about their proposed program during the negotiation process. In today's webinar, we are going to review the purpose of the grant and some important definitions. We will also take a closer look at the three funding streams that are available. We will discuss what types of activities can be supported with grant funds, as well as who is eligible to apply. We will discuss the levels of expectations and compliance requirements for applicants who are selected. And finally, we'll take a look at the application itself to review the process for completing and submitting the application materials. Funds for this grant are authorized under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act of 2014, also known as WIOA. Funds are distributed to the states through the U.S. Department of Education, and the state agency that administers these funds in Idaho is Idaho Career and Technical Education. The purpose of the grant is to select local providers to carry out quality adult education and literacy programs. We will get into greater depth about the definition of adult education later in the webinar. Because Idaho receives limited funds and there is a high level of compliance requirements, our priority will be to support ongoing programs. Funds are not intended to support one-time projects or single-purpose purchases. Applicants who are selected for funding will receive annual grants for a period of 2 years. Grantees who remain in good standing after the initial 2 years may continue to receive grants each year at the discretion of the state. Applicants will be asked to submit annual program plans and reports in subsequent years in order to receive continued funding. The state reserves the right to recompete funds at any time after the initial 2-year funding period concludes. Applications for this grant will be due on March 15, 2017. We anticipate that funding decisions will be made and applicants notified sometime in May. At this time, the state office does not have final funding figures from either the U.S. Department of Education or the Idaho State Legislature. Applicants should be aware that final grant awards may change based on increases or decreases to the program from federal and state budgets. The following definitions are intended to help potential applicants determine whether this grant aligns with the programs and services they provide, and if this funding is a good fit for them. Adult education generally comprises two types of instruction. The first, which has a rather redundant name, is adult education and literacy. The second is English language acquisition. Both strands of instruction are intended to help adult students aged 16 or older improve their skills for the purposes of getting their high school equivalency, getting ready for college, or finding a job or improving their employment. In some programs, these two strands of instruction may be blended or contextualized to provide a holistic approach to student skill building. Adult education is defined as academic instruction from beginning literacy up to the college readiness level that increases an individual's ability to read, write, and perform mathematics. It may also include activities such as digital literacy and workplace readiness. English language acquisition is instruction designed to help eligible individuals who are English language learners achieve competence in reading, writing, speaking, and comprehension of the English language. The statute authorizing this grant says that programs should prioritize services for populations with significant barriers to employment. Who are these populations, and what does this mean for grantees? People with significant barriers to employment include a wide variety of groups. Most importantly, for our purposes, this includes individuals with low levels of literacy, individuals who are English language learners, and individuals facing substantial cultural barriers. Other affected groups include low-income individuals, persons with disabilities, people experiencing homelessness, youth who have aged out of the foster care system, and a number of other groups of people whose circumstances may prevent them from finding meaningful employment. A complete list of such populations, as specified in statute, can be found in the application appendix. The only eligibility requirement for the people served with these grant funds is that they are age 16 or older and have some literacy or English language skills below the college-ready level. However, applicants should keep in mind that programs funded under this grant are expected to prioritize service for people who face significant barriers to employment. If you'll hold on just a moment, it sounds like somebody is having technical difficulty. But I'm going to keep moving through this. As I mentioned previously, let's see. Sorry about that. As I mentioned previously, these funds are authorized in federal statute under Title II of WIOA. The law authorizes a variety of activities and services related to adult education and gives states discretion as to which activities and programs they will fund. In Idaho, we will be supporting 3 types of adult education programs. For ease of reference throughout the application materials, these funding streams have been labeled according to the section of the law where they are authorized. The first funding stream, called Section 231, is for regional adult education programs. This is the funding stream that will support the primary regional providers of adult education. The next funding stream, called Section 225, is for programs that provide adult education to incarcerated or institutionalized adults. The third funding stream, called Section 243, is for programs that provide integrated English literacy and civics education. So now I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into each of these funding streams. The purpose of Section 231 funding is to select a single regional provider in each of Idaho's 6 service delivery regions. The selected grantee will be expected to provide adult education and literacy services to the entire region. In regions with significant populations of English language learners, grantees will also be expected to provide English language acquisition as well. The anticipated funding levels vary by region and are determined using a number of factors such as applicable populations and cost factors such as rural or urban delivery areas. The annual regional funding levels range from an estimated $236,000 to $858,000. These funding amounts consist of a combination of state and federal funds and are based on historical state funding levels and anticipated budgets for the fiscal year. Applicants should note that the final funding levels may change once the state is allocated its final budget. Here we can see the counties contained in each of the 6 regions. This map, along with anticipated funding levels for each region, are included in the application appendix. It should be noted that those anticipated funding levels are annual funding levels. Those are not the combined funding levels for both years. So again, that's an annual funding level. Grantees funded under Section 231 will receive a fixed amount each year, which is determined in advance through a formula. Applicants who wish to apply for funds under this funding stream should design their program and budget to align with the annual funding amounts designated in the appendix. The purpose of Section 225 funding is to select one or more grantees who can provide adult education services specifically for adults who are incarcerated or institutionalized. The state may award multiple grants under this funding stream, depending on the number and quality of applications we receive. Up to $115,000 are available statewide, and these grants will consist only of federal funds. For the purposes of this grant, services must be provided to criminal offenders who are adults, where a criminal offender is any individual who is charged with or convicted of any criminal offense. Furthermore, activities and services must take place in a correctional institution or setting, which could include a prison, jail, reformatory, work farm, detention center, halfway house, community-based rehabilitation center, or any other institution designed for the confinement or rehabilitation of criminal offenders. The state will consider applications for programs of various sizes, including statewide incarcerated programs, as well as programs that take place in a single facility or community. As a point of clarification, Section 225 funds are intended to solicit and support programs who only wish to provide adult education within the narrow scope of corrections education and who may not be interested in serving a broader population. We wanted to make funds available for those specific types of programs in order to expand opportunities for smaller programs and programs with a local or limited scope. That being said, applicants who wish to become regional providers under Section 221 are allowed to provide services at correctional facilities as part of their regional approach. In that case, they should include those services in their Section 231 budget and do not need to submit a separate application under Section 225. If anyone needs further clarification on this point, you're welcome to submit a question today, or you can contact our office for further clarification regarding which funding stream is the best fit and how to include that in your budget. The purpose of Section 243 funding is to provide integrated English literacy and civics education. These are education services provided to English language learners who are adults, including professionals with degrees and credentials in their native countries. These are services that enable participants to achieve competency in the English language and to acquire the basic and more advanced skills needed to function effectively as parents, workers, and citizens of the United States. Such services must include instruction in literacy and English language acquisition and instruction on the rights and responsibilities of citizenship and civic participation. Eligible programs must also provide access to an integrated education and training program, also known as an IET. Please refer to the Section 243 application instructions and packet, as well as the appendix, for more information about this requirement. Grants under this funding stream will be available in the service regions that have a high number of English language learners, which are Regions 3, 4, 5, and 6. We have capped funds at the regional level to ensure adequate funds are available in each region. The state may consider and award grants to multiple applicants in each region, depending on the number and quality of applications we receive. Applicants should request a funding amount that aligns with the size of their program and which does not exceed the amount available for their region. Estimated funding amounts range from $13,000 to $83,000 per region, depending on the region. And grants under this funding stream will consist of federal funds only. So far, we've talked about the types of activities that can be supported with grant funds, as well as the types of students and people who should be served with the grant-funded programs. Now I will discuss the types of entities who are eligible to apply for and receive funds. Then I'll cover some of the most important points related to expectations and compliance for entities who are selected. The law states that any entity of demonstrated effectiveness can apply for funds. The law then specifies some examples of entities that might be included in this group and which are listed on this slide. It's important to note that this list is not exhaustive, and additionally, a consortium or group of such entities may also apply together. So what exactly does the law mean when it says any entity with demonstrated effectiveness? In short, this means any entity or organization that has history and experience providing adult education as we have defined adult education here today. It also means that an entity must be able to provide data or evidence that has successfully carried out adult education activities in the past, including activities that lead to high school equivalency, college transition, and/or employment. Entities or organizations that lack experience in adult education are not eligible to apply. In other words, funds are not intended for startup organizations. However, we will consider funding new or expanded activities carried out by applicants who have a strong history of adult education. And for entities applying as a consortium, at least the lead member must have demonstrated effectiveness. Applicants should review the application instructions and application packet for a complete description and definition of demonstrated effectiveness. Applicants should note that these grant funds come with a high level of expectation and compliance. The next 4 slides highlight some of the most important expectations and requirements of which applicants should be aware. Applicants who are selected to receive grant funds will receive hands-on technical assistance and training from this office, and may also qualify for additional funds to cover the cost of training, professional development, and other activities related to program quality and compliance. Because grantees will qualify to receive funds on an ongoing basis after the conclusion of the initial 2-year period, it's our hope that over time the upfront costs of compliance will be balanced against the benefits of a steady source of funding. I will briefly review the major compliance elements, and interested applicants are welcome to clarify or ask for more information once we open the floor for questions. So I'm just going to quickly read through some of these compliance elements. Only WIOA authorized activities may be charged to grant funds. Funds may only be expended in accordance with the approved budget. Grantees must keep time and effort reports and documentation of expenditures, and funds are provided on a reimbursement basis. Grantees must adhere to all state and federal rules, regulations, and policies regarding the expenditure of federal funds. Grantees must use federal funds to supplement and not supplant local and state funds. And administrative costs are limited to 5% of the budget, unless negotiated higher with ICTE, And that 5% cap does include any indirect rates that may be charged to the grant. For Regional 231 applicants where there is state money involved, you're welcome to reach out to me. I realize that 5% cap doesn't apply to state funds, so you're welcome to reach out to me for clarification on that. Grantees must collect student data according to state and federal guidelines, including the use of pre- and post-tests and standardized assessments. Grantees must enter data into the state's Management Information System, which we call IMAS. Grantees must submit regular reports as specified by the Idaho Career and Technical Education. Grantees are subject to monitoring and evaluation. Grantees are expected to contribute to the state's performance targets and support Idaho's state plans. Grantees are expected to participate in professional development activities and make such activities available to their staff. And finally, grantees are expected to participate in the WIOA one-stop system and with other community partners. Applicants who have not previously received funds to support their program may or may not be familiar with Idaho's one-stop system. More information about one-stops, as well as the roles and expectations of adult education programs, can be found in the appendix. So far, I have covered the types of activities that will be supported with grant funds, the types of entities who can apply for funds, and the expectations and compliance requirements for selected grantees. Now I'd like to dive into the application itself. The application materials were published on our website on February 1st, 2017. Applications will be due by 5 p.m. Mountain Time on March 15th, 2017. We anticipate that funding decisions will be complete by mid-May or possibly late May, and the state office will conduct final follow-up and negotiations with selected grantees during June, and the funds will be available beginning July 1st. Applicants should note that any expenditures made prior to July 1st may not be charged to this grant. We have some happy people laughing in the background, so hopefully that's not interfering too much. All right, so some entities may be interested in applying for grants under more than one of the available funding streams. You are certainly welcome to do so. However, you must complete a separate and unique application for each funding stream and submit each application separately. So that means a separate email submission for each application. Application materials for all three funding streams are available on our website, which is listed here. You can also find our grant webpage by going to cte.idaho.gov and typing grant into the search field. Applications should be submitted by email according to the instructions in the instruction document. Applicants will receive a reply email to confirm submission within 1 business day. If you do not receive a reply email within 1 business day, please feel free to reach out to us to make sure that your application was received. We strongly encourage applicants to submit their application materials in advance of the deadline to ensure extra time and flexibility should they encounter any technical glitches or difficulty with the submission process. The state office will review all applications it receives for completeness, and all complete applications which are submitted by eligible entities will then be forwarded for review to 2 independent review panels. The Workforce Development Council will review and rate all applications for alignment with Idaho's WIOA Combined State Plan. A separate review panel of adult education stakeholders and fellow educators will review and rate applications for the overall quality, capacity, and appropriateness of the activities being proposed. Applicants who are selected for funding will undergo a final negotiation process to confirm final budget amounts, address any gaps or problems with their proposal, and receive initial technical assistance and onboarding support from our office. Although the state has made every effort to provide accurate funding estimates, the final amounts available for distribution may differ depending on final allocations made by the U.S. Department of Education and the Idaho State Legislature. I realize I have said that a few times now, but I think it bears repeating. So now I want to overview the application itself. The application for each funding stream consists of 4 documents: the application instructions, the application packet, budget templates, and the application appendix. The instructions and packet are unique for each funding stream, while the budget templates and appendix are common for all 3 funding streams. We strongly encourage applicants to read through the entire application instructions and to read the entire application packet, including all the questions, before beginning. We also encourage applicants to skim the materials in the appendix prior to beginning so that they can familiarize themselves with the information that is contained there. The application instructions contain important information about the grant, fundable activities, eligibility, submission requirements, evaluation criteria, and next steps for funded applicants. The application packet contains the specific questions which you will need, to which you will provide a response and on which you will be evaluated. So rather than open-ended questions with long-form responses, the application packet solicits a series of short to medium-length responses to a number of specific questions. This design was chosen so that applicants don't have to guess about what information they should include in their proposal. It will also assist grant reviewers find the information they need more quickly and easily. The application packet is in the form of a Word document. Applicants should download the document, save it with the appropriate naming conventions, and type their responses directly into the document. Anywhere you see a gray box or a checkbox, you should provide the appropriate information or response. The gray boxes can only be viewed when the document is opened electronically in Word, and they will not appear when printed. These boxes will disappear once you begin typing into them. That's perfectly okay, and your typed responses will appear when printed. When responding to questions, applicants should note the word limit for each question. Please, please, please respect these word limits so that reviewers can get through each application in a timely manner. A clear and sufficient response in many cases will be less than the word limit provided. Applicants should use the budget templates provided on the web page to create and submit their proposal budgets. A full description of how to fill out your budgets can be found at the end of the application packet. We realize that some folks may have been looking for this logically in the information and instructions document. Unfortunately, we're only human, so we apologize if putting these in the packet caused confusion for anyone, but that is where you will find the instructions for filling out your budget is actually in the application packet. This slide contains some helpful pointers for using these templates. There are 2 different budgets, a program budget and an administrative budget, and those should be completed separately and included as separate attachments. The Excel template is locked so that formulas cannot be edited. You will only be allowed to type in certain cells which are unlocked for your use. When you open the Excel document, along the bottom you'll see a series of tabs. The first tab contains instructions, so be sure to read that first. And then there will be 2 more tabs that have information that need to be filled out. Applicants have the ability to add rows to the budget narrative if they need to expand the narrative to include more information. A complete set of instructions for submitting applications can be found in the application instructions. And this slide provides a high-level summary of how applications should be submitted. So they should be emailed. You'll want to email the completed Word document as well as all applicable attachments. Refer to the last section of the application packet for a complete list of attachments. Not all attachments will be required for all applicants, so you'll want to read through those. Be sure to follow naming conventions for all of your files. This will really help us keep track of all the documents we receive and ensure that there's no confusion or delays. You will receive an email confirmation when your grant has been received, or within 1 business day. So at this time, I'd like to open the floor for questions. In order to keep a complete transcript, we'll ask that all questions be submitted using the Q&A feature in the webinar. At this time, I am going to keep all the lines muted just to preserve the audio quality for recording purposes. If you have a question that's not answered here today, please know that our office is here to help. If a portion of the application is not clear, if you don't understand what or how a document should be formatted or submitted, please reach out to us. We can't tell you how to respond to a question, but I'm more than happy to provide clarification and technical assistance. So with that, I'm going to open the floor for Q&A. I'm going to start. There was one question that got submitted to me in advance, and that question was in relationship to the budget. Somebody had asked me if the budget is a 1-year budget or a 2-year budget, which is a great question. The funding amounts that you will be asking for in this application will be for 1 year. And then at the conclusion of the first year, you will have a chance to submit an updated program plan and a new budget for the second year of the funding cycle. So when you're completing your budgets for this application due on March 15th, those will be 1-year budgets, and the budget for your second year of the grant will be submitted at a later time. All right, so great. We've got some questions coming in. I'm going to tackle these one at a time in the order that they were received. All right, somebody asked, in the section Need for Service and Population Served under question 1, where we describe trends in literacy, can we insert a table if we use narrative to explain our table? There is a max of 750 words. That's a really great question. Yes, you are welcome to use a table and other formatting. The words that are included in the table will count towards your 750 word limit. So you're welcome to use a mixture of narrative and tabulated information in those responses. And if you, as you're putting those responses together, if you're having any issues with formatting or it's looking glitchy or you're not sure something's appropriate, you're welcome to contact me directly. But yes, tables are fine. I wouldn't encourage you to use a very long or intricate table. Again, you want to go for brevity and clarity so that our grant reviewers can get through all the applications in a timely manner, and we can get you guys your funding decisions in May. Okay. Another good question, how much should we budget for IMAS? So those of you who have been grant recipients in the past know that we ask our grant recipients to designate a certain portion of their budget for paying their share of using our state data system. And when we've had about 6 applicants in the past, that has come out to be about $4,000 to $5,000 per applicant. I would say that you can go ahead and budget something in that ballpark. Again, we will, for those who are selected to become grantees, we'll negotiate that final amount during the negotiation process. But for those of you who have been grantees in the past, you can expect to budget about the same. For those of you who may not have gotten grants like this in the past, you're welcome to contact me. We do typically charge grant recipients a small amount for use of data system, but that's also going to depend on the budget that you get and the size of your program. IMAS fees will fall under your administrative budget, so do keep that in mind. All right, next question. How much should we budget for one-stop partner responsibilities? I think at this point in time, you might not think of it so much as a budgetary expense, except where it might cost you to establish those partnerships. There will be some infrastructure cost sharing that will happen down the road, but all of the information about that is still unknown because the state agencies that are responsible for setting that up haven't actually come to a conclusion yet. So do be aware that you may, for some regions that end up being hosts to a comprehensive one-stop center, those regional providers will likely be asked to include some infrastructure cost sharing. Those costs will only apply to Section 231 regional providers. They will not apply necessarily to smaller programs under the correctional and the EL Civics, or the Integrated English Language and Civics program. So I'm sorry I don't have more information. You don't have to include that in your budget for the application, but be aware that you may be asked to include that in your budget during the negotiation process. Okay, next question. Please clarify the process for applying for the Leadership and Professional Development Funds that are separate from other applications. Good question. So under this grant, historically we have set aside funds that are called Leadership and Professional Development Funds, and those are discretionary grants that we give to our providers to support their professional development costs. So the way that will work is we will go through the competitive grant application. Those folks who are selected to become grantees will then qualify for additional funds under professional development and leadership. However, you will not be budgeting for or applying for those funds at this time. That's a step that's going to happen after we've selected our providers. And that will be part of your negotiation and onboarding process that will happen in the spring. How much should we budget for directors' meetings, 2 meetings for the first year? So, again, for those folks who may not have been part of this grant pool in the past, typically we have asked that the administrators for each program come to Boise a couple times a year so that we can have some statewide meetings. We can all pick each other's brains. Those have typically been required. I think they're going to be strongly encouraged this year, but until we know how things are going to shake out with the competition, I'm not 100% sure on those. But I would say do expect that you'll have to travel to Boise a couple times during the year for the purposes of a director's meeting, which would be an administrative cost. So I'd say you could expect to travel to Boise probably twice. And if that changes, we'll work on supporting those costs with other funds. Would I address the 5% limit? Is it 5% of the overall budget? That's a great question. So technically speaking, the 5% limit is 5% of your federal funds. We have in the past allowed grantees to use the state portion of their grant to cover administrative costs without applying that towards the 5% cap. So for those people who are applying under Section 243 or Section 225, those are all federal funds, which means the 5% cap applies to the entire grant amount. And if you anticipate that your administrative costs will go over 5% for those two funding streams, you do need to contact me in advance so we can negotiate raising that administrative cap. For those of you who are applying under Section 231 for regional grants, the information provided in the application packet does not currently break out state versus, or it might break out state versus federal funds. And if that's the case, the 5% cap would only apply to the federal amount. I unfortunately don't have that in front of me. I will double check. And if that's not the case, then I will make sure to address that. You are also welcome to contact me directly for clarification on that, but it is 5% of your federal funds. Okay, next question. We include a small portion of the director's salary under the administrative budget, even though this has been funded with state dollars in the past. I understand that the administrative budget needs to be no more than 5%. Again, if you have funded positions and salaries out of state funding in the past, supplanting rules will still apply even though you're considered a new provider under this grant. So if you've budgeted out of state funds, the director's position out of state funds in the past, the director's position will need to come out of state funds again. But that will not apply to the 5% cap because the 5% cap only applies to your federal funds. However, when you're submitting your budget for the year, we're only asking that you submit one single budget that incorporates both your state and federal dollars all together. So if you have any questions about that, again, you're welcome to contact me. If you need to make a note on your budget that that your certain costs are coming out of state money as opposed to federal money, just you're welcome to make a note right there in the budget for that purpose if you're concerned about that 5% cap. Please explain number 25 and 26. Specifically, can we use Table 5 to retrieve the data requested? I'm assuming that those are questions about the demonstrated effectiveness. The question numbers aren't the same on each of the funding streams, so from the sounds of it, I'm guessing those are the questions related to demonstrated effectiveness. Yes, if you received grants in the past as a provider under WIA, you are welcome to use any information that you glean from the IMAS database as well as any of the federal reporting tables. And if you have not received funding from us in the past and you're curious about what data can be used, or if you have data you'd like to use but you're not sure if that's appropriate, you're welcome to reach out to me as well. What is the difference between workplace adult education and literacy activities and workforce preparation activities as separated out in question 9? I'm assuming question 9 is the one that has the list of activities where you can check those, and I'm guessing this is for the Section 231 grant. I would recommend that you look in the appendix. There is a copy of the Idaho Title II State Plan. The Idaho's Title II State Plan does include more in-depth definitions of all of the allowable activities, so that would be a great starting place for that. But just really quickly, workplace adult education and literacy activities, that is adult education and literacy activities that take place at a work site. So that is reading, writing, math, instruction, academic instruction that takes place at a workplace. It might include some contextualized instruction as well. Workforce preparation activities are actually more of a soft skills development, so those are things like showing up to work on time, problem solving, working with your peers, working with others, things that are skills that you would need to be successful in the workplace. I am not seeing any new or different questions, so I think I'm going to give it a few more minutes. We did have a full hour scheduled, and I know there were some folks who joined the meeting a little bit late. Again, you are welcome to submit your questions to the Q&A feature in the top gray bar, and I'm going to just give it a few more minutes and make sure nobody thinks of any other questions. And again, you are more than welcome to reach out to me directly. Please don't be shy. I'm not mean. I don't bite. So I'm the person you'll be talking to, and I'm happy to help where I can. Okay. And as I said at the beginning of this meeting, or this webinar, all of the materials, so the slides as well as the speaker notes, which I read from directly, will be posted. The questions will be posted, and I will do my best to answer those in writing as well. And hopefully, if all of our technology works, there will also be a recording available. And the recording itself, the materials, it may take us a couple days to get the materials posted. So please be patient. Okay, well, I am not seeing a lot more activity. I thank you all for submitting your really good clarifying questions. I hope that I was able to answer them to your satisfaction, and if I wasn't, please do feel free to reach out to me. It looks like we've got one more here. Question number 29, specifically define career pathways as relates to elementary schools. I don't have that question right in front of me. Career pathways is actually defined in WIOA. It includes elementary schools because the definition of career pathways is broad and it applies to a number of different programs. For our purposes, elementary schools isn't really within our scope of services, so it's not, when you're looking at, like, for instance, I'm kind of guessing this also may have a little bit to do with alignment with the state plan and addressing the goals and vision and strategies of the state plan. You only need to address those in as much as they apply to the activities that you are authorized to provide and that fall within your scope of service. So it wouldn't necessarily be reasonable for somebody to expect an adult education provider to address career pathways as it relates to elementary schools, but we would certainly expect you to be able to think through career pathways as it relates to college entrance, transition, training for employment, and to the extent that maybe you partner with some secondary schools, because we do serve students who are age 16 and older. So that's really more where the focus with career pathways would intersect with this grant. All right. I'm just going to hang out here and give everybody the full time to submit their questions. Some of you may be sort of leafing through your application and maybe thinking through some questions right now. So I'm going to stay on the line until 4 p.m. To give everybody the full hour. If you feel like you have gotten all your questions answered and you don't need anything else, you're welcome to leave the meeting at this time. At this point, I am going to stop the recording just so we don't have a bunch of dead air on the recording itself. But like I said, I will be happy to hang out until 4 p.m. to give everybody the full dedicated amount of time to answer their questions.